Ambassador.
Such a pleasure meeting you. Welcome to India.
Thank you for having us.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
So this year marks the 70th anniversary of the Korean War, and I understand India played a big role throughout the conflict. I'm here to hear all about it.
Come inside and we'll sit down and have a conversation.
I look forward to it.
Please come. Please have a seat.
Okay, thank you. Wow, it's a lovely place you've got here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very modern and classic at the same time. Very nice.
We've tried to, bring out a little bit of India.
Yes, I can see that.
In everything, while at the same time maintaining a very, very comfortable, modern, practical feel to it. It's a combination, and I'd like to think that we've done a good job of that.
Yes, yes, very nice. So this year marks the 70th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War, and I understand India was one of the first countries that wanted to put a stop to the war as soon as it started. And it made a recommendation to the UN, but that was rejected. Can you tell us why?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. But in my personal opinion, we had always been opposed to war as a principle, as a matter of principle. We had always been opposed to conflict and to war, and we're firm believers in discussions and dialogue as a means of overcoming conflict and bringing about a rapprochement between nations. But as you know, at that time, it was the period when the Cold War had just in a sense broken out, and the two superpowers were in competition in many ways.
Yes.
And I guess the Korean Peninsula was just another ground on which the whole Cold War dynamics played out. So India, which was at that time a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, managed to maintain its neutrality throughout this period and had in fact proposed an immediate ceasefire and the withdrawal of all the foreign forces from the peninsula as a whole. This proposal did not find favor, and you can imagine that the kind of geopolitics that were at play at that time, it was not a proposal that was carried. And eventually the UN did pass a resolution calling for the intensification, in fact, of the presence of troops on the peninsula to fight the pressure from the north. Another interesting fact, at this time, India had actually passed on to the UN fairly reliable information that the PRC would enter the war in support of North Korea if the UN troops were to cross the 38th parallel.
Right.
This input was not given too much of importance at that time, and the UN troops actually crossed the 38th parallel, and the rest is history.
I see. India provided medical support to South Korea during the war. Can you tell us how that decision came about and the size of the support?
At that time, when the war had broken out, India had made it very clear that while we were opposed to the war, we supported UN intervention to end the war.
Yes.
We were just very clear that we did not want to take any steps that could lead to an escalation of the conflict. But given the kind of affection that the people of India had for the people of Korea, when the UN passed a resolution, when the UNGA passed a resolution calling upon the international community to come to the aid of Korea at that time,
right.
We were very quick in taking that decision that we would send a medical unit to help the people of Korea and to help the UN forces. And accordingly, the 60th Para Field Ambulance Unit arrived in Busan on the 20th of November 1950. This was actually a unit that was capable of providing 2 surgical teams and 1 dental team. In the course of the war, the unit actually treated about 225,000 people.
Wow.
Both soldiers and civilians. It earned a very, very good reputation, and
Right.
I think it was earned the very fitting title, I'd say, of the Maroon Angels. They were called the Maroon Angels because they had a maroon beret to
Wow.
part of the uniform.
I see. So the Korean War not only involved 2 Koreas, but also 30 countries that sent troops or medical support to South and North Korea, making it seem like another world war. What were the specific efforts to stop the war?
At this time at the UN, there was an attempt, or there was a desire on the part of many of the friends of Korea to find ways of containing the conflict, because it was quite clear that the situation in the peninsula was deteriorating and deteriorating fast. So at this time, India, on behalf of 13 Asian and Arab states, had proposed that a group of 3 could be constituted to explore the possibilities of bringing about an end to this war. That proposal was approved by the UNGA on the 14th of December, and this group was constituted with the UNGA president, the then president of the UNGA, the foreign minister of Canada, and the Indian permanent representative to the UN as its members. On the 13th of January 1951, the group actually presented a set of clauses for peace to the UNGA, for a ceasefire to the UNGA. But this unfortunately fell through because of opposition from the USSR and the PRC.
It is unfortunate that the negotiation fell through. What happened next?
I think again both the camps were trying to make efforts to come up with a solution to this war which was going on for far too long. And a meeting was held at Panmunjom on the 10th of July 1951, at which many of the issues that were preventing the end of hostilities were discussed. Some of these were resolved, but one of them remained really a sticking point, and that was the fate of the prisoners of war after the end of the war.
I see.
What would happen to those prisoners of war who did not choose to be repatriated back to their native countries? How would they be dealt with? I think this was really the biggest problem, the biggest stumbling block that was discovered, especially after a survey conducted by the UN command found that of the almost 170,000 prisoners of war, only 73,000 actually wanted to return to their native countries. So with this discovery, the Indian leadership decided that it had to make an active effort to find to help reach a compromise. And the Indian government dispatched a very senior and seasoned Indian diplomat, Mr. V.K. Krishna Menon, to present India's views at the UNGA and try and find a compromise which could be agreeable to everybody. The difference was basically this: the US and its allies wanted both sides should accept the principle of non-forcible repatriation, which is meaning thereby that all the prisoners of war would have full freedom of choice.
I see.
Whereas the communist camp wanted an all-in-all repatriation, meaning that all those who belong to that country should go back to that country. What was really interesting at this time is that Ambassador Menon discovered that 2 of the Commonwealth nations, the UK and Canada, came to the understanding that the US proposal, US and its allies' proposal, would not be acceptable to the communist camp, that this was a non-starter. And the Indian delegation therefore tried to do what it could to bridge to unite the Commonwealth nations so that they would be able to bridge this gap.
Yes.
Ambassador Menon suggested that a commission could be established that would take custody of all the non-repatriated prisoners after the armistice and would decide upon their final disposition within a specified period of 60 days.
Wow.
All the willing prisoners would be repatriated immediately, while the others would be over the next 90 days. The respective countries would have an opportunity to interact with them and try and persuade these prisoners of war that they should come back to their native countries. And if after this period there were still some prisoners of war left who were unwilling to return to to where they came from, their fate would be discussed for a further period of 30 days at a post-war conference on Korea that had already been agreed to in principle. And if even after that no decision could be reached, then the final disposition of the prisoners would be decided by the UN. And that is what led eventually to the creation of the Neutral Nations Repatriation Commission, which went into all these all the details of the handling of the prisoners of war. And both sides had the opportunity to nominate countries to that commission. And India was nominated to chair this commission. So we in turn nominated Lieutenant General Timaya to head this commission, so to sort out the issues of the prisoners of war.
Wow, this is a historic moment. India played a major role in getting this breakthrough.
Yeah, I guess since we had the advantage of being, in a sense, a neutral party in many ways, and were seen as being, in a sense, acceptable to both sides, on both sides of the ideological fence. I guess we were able to play a constructive role in
Yes, yes. At that time, there must have been a lot of pressure from both sides to choose a neutral country to lead this commission. How did India become the chair, considering it was already providing medical support to South Korea?
I think India had earned the confidence of most UN members and had become, in a way, known for being able to maintain impartiality.
Okay.
And it helped that we were never part of any Cold War bloc, neither on either side. You know, we were known for our anti-colonial ideology. We were known for our for a very principled, liberal, progressive ideology, and our goal had remained consistent and clear at all times, that we wanted to see an end to the conflict at the earliest, so that the suffering of the people could be minimized. These could be the reasons why India was invited to chair the commission, I guess.
I understand. Tell us about the role that India played as the head of the commission.
I think the very, very important aspect was the support that we extended to the work of the commission by deputing the Custodian Forces India, as it was called, which numbered 5,230 men, including 5 infantry battalions, 1 brigade headquarters, and a military hospital, a general hospital.
Right.
The 60th Parafield Ambulance Unit, they were also amalgamated within this Custodian Forces India. The role that was performed by these forces was really to take into custody all the non-repatriated prisoners of war, check their intentions, their preferences, enable the relevant country to interact with them, read them their rights, explain what was possible, so that these prisoners of war were able to exercise their free choice. And that was really the task that was assigned to the commission and supported by the CFI.
Right.
And all this had to be done within a very, very short period of time. So it was not an easy task.
Yes, sounds like a big achievement there as well. On top of all this, India was just going through economic difficulties following the Indo-Pakistani war. It made thorough preparations despite the difficult circumstances. How did you manage all this?
I think it was just sense of the strong connections, the strong sense of kinship which the people of India felt with the people of Korea, which made India prepared to contribute to the maximum extent that it could. So, at this time, given the very, very difficult and complicated ground situation, the CFI, the Custodian Forces India, had to be airlifted from to the area of operations. It moved in 5 batches to the ROK by air and by sea, and they were then airlifted to the DMZ by helicopter. This was one of the largest helicopter operations ever in military history. The CFI also established 2 camps, the North Camp and the South Camp, for receiving the non-repatriated prisoners of war. And it also established 2 more camps for the Indian custodian forces. They were given very uniquely Indian names. One was called the Hind Nagar, or the Indian city, which was at Tongjeongni. And the other was in Panmunjom, and it was called Shantinagar, which means peace city. So yeah, so these were the 2. These were the various aspects of the work which the CFI did in its early days.
When the Armistice Agreement was reached in 1953, it must have been a moment of mixed emotions for India. Tell us about that.
You know, the end of the war was something which was objective of the government of India for a very, very long time. So we were really very happy when the armistice was signed. Not a full-fledged peace treaty, but an armistice nevertheless. So which meant that active hostilities were at an end. So this was greatly welcomed by the government and the people of India. And at the same time, we shifted our focus over there so that we were able to perform the responsibility that we had taken on.
Yes. What were the difficulties for India in carrying out its duties as the head of the NNRC?
I would say that the most challenging part of this role was maintaining the confidence and the calm amongst the prisoners of war, keeping them motivated, and at the same time maintaining order and discipline in the camps where they were located. And I guess the best testimonial to this came in the form of a letter from the US President Eisenhower to the Indian Prime Minister Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, when he said that no military unit in recent times has undertaken a more delicate, more demanding peace mission than that has been faced by the Indian unit in the Korean Peninsula.
That's very meaningful.
So that's a sense of, there is a sense of achievement and a sense of pride for what we managed at that time.
Yes. I understand some POWs didn't want to return to their home countries. What was India's suggestion on that POW issue?
We did our best to, in a sense, build the trust between the two opposing camps, and to give both sides the confidence that the prisoners of war would be treated with dignity and would be given that safe space in which they could exercise their free choice. And that is really what we tried to do at the outset. The prisoners of war were extremely wary. They were quite stressed. In the beginning, there was a lot of doubts about the Indian custodial forces also, whether they would be truly impartial, whether they would allow the prisoners of war to express themselves freely. But I think over a period of time that confidence built up. There was a lot of additional stress on the part of the Chinese and the North Korean prisoners of war, largely because of the presence of communist observers in the South Camp, as it was called. And in fact, there were some POWs who actually refused to repatriate at the end of the day. All these prisoners of war who chose not to go back to their country were taken on by India and were then further given the option of repatriating to other countries as per their preference, and this was facilitated through the Indian Red Cross. So it was a fairly lengthy and time-consuming procedure.
I understand there were 88 soldiers that didn't want to go back, and what was their reason?
That's very hard for us to guess at. I mean, one doesn't know what was the state of mind amongst these people.
They didn't tell the commission why they didn't want to go back either.
I am not aware, actually. I have not seen those records, so I am not too sure of what was their stated reason for not wishing to return. But they made it clear that they would prefer to go somewhere else in the world. So as I mentioned, all of them initially came to India. They were taken in by India.
Yes.
And eventually only 9 of these 88 stayed on in India, where they took on new professions. Some became farmers, some became photographers, some became businessmen, and they were helped in this effort by the government of India, which gave them that facilitation and that assistance. But all the rest of them decided to seek a new future, a new life in Latin America. They were taken in by Brazil. So that's where they ended up at the end of the day.
I see. When you first took on the 88 prisoners, you supported them financially. How did India cover these costs?
The people of India were happy to support the task. And the prisoners of war who came back and who were in India, whatever was the cost on their settling them down, making them comfortable in a new life.
Right.
These were happily borne by the government of India.
And there were no objections from Indian people?
No, not at all.
It's very generous.
Not at all.
The Korean War resulted in deaths of not only Koreans but countless foreigners, and despite such sacrifice, the Korean peninsula still remains divided and technically at war without a peace treaty. I just hope that such a tragedy doesn't happen again.
I completely agree with you. Completely agree. I think the efforts that are being made by the Korean government, by the ROK government, to restore peace on the Korean peninsula, they enjoy the fullest support of the government and the people of India. We wish you all success in this quest and will stand firmly with you in this on this journey.
Yes. Thank you for the interview. How do you say peace be with you in your language?
I can't think of a better way of expressing this than through a very old Sanskrit prayer. It reads as follows: Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu, Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And that means may there be well-being in all, may there be peace in all, may there be fulfillment in all, may there be auspiciousness in all, may there be peace everywhere.
It sounds beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.